Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Justice, and I'm a Field Chief Technology Officer for our Energy and Utilities practice. Today, we're going to do a demo of NERC CIP 7 and 10. Today, our speakers today are going to be Brendan Ancona, who is our solutions consultant, Michael Godden, who is our Senior Advisory Solution Architect in our cybersecurity practice, and Megan Laughlin, who is our IRM solutions consultant. Thank you for your participation today, and we hope you get a lot of value out of this demo. Michael, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so let's get started, guys. So this is Mike Godden. I'm the advisory solution consultant focused on the SecOps portfolio here at ServiceNow. So what I'd really like to focus on today is really kind of an end-to-end demonstration that combines the use cases and management responsibilities for a lot of different personas. You're going to be hearing from three participants on this demonstration today. Myself, who will be playing the role of a vulnerability manager, Megan Laughlin, who will be playing the role of our compliance manager, and Brendan Ancona, who will be playing the role of our IT and change manager. When we think about NERC CIP 7 and 10 and the workflow in most organizations, everything really begins with integrated risk management. We want to wrap those NERC policies and controls around a framework that allows you to perform patch assessments, produce mitigation action plans, and track the life cycle of vulnerabilities that are detected in your environment, both within the IT and OT estate. Now, in order to achieve this, it takes a lot of different components to really facilitate this overall administration, from detection right down to remediation. And that's really what our goal is today. We'll be focusing on some facets within the ServiceNow platform that are going to touch on different modules, right from service management to change management, asset management, security operations, and even our GRC process. So to kind of kick us off, I'm going to have Megan really, take us down the path of how we integrate NERC CIP 7 and 10 controls into our IRM framework in order to provide a governance layer into the administration of vulnerabilities from the detection to the remediation of those. So Megan, can I kick the ball to you to share your screen and get us going?
Yes, sounds good, Mike. Thank you. Let me go ahead and grab the screen. All right, is my screen loaded?
You've got it.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Megan Laughlin, and I'm the solution consultant for the integrated risk management suite of products, which include our compliance management product, which can help you establish and maintain your compliance frameworks for all different types of regulations, including NERC CIP. So to start, I'm logged into our compliance management workspace as Jacob Williams, and he's going to be our compliance manager. So from here, he's going to be able to see the unified interface where he's able to look at all of the compliance tasks across his organization and then see how his organization is compliant with different regulations that they're required to be compliant with. So he can look at the compliance posture, look at all the different authority documents in his organization he needs to be compliant with, as well as all the internal policies, and then all the different entities or assets within his organization that are required to be compliant. So jumping into our authority document list from a NERC CIP authority documents, you're going to be able to pull in all the different authority documents that are related to NERC CIP into ServiceNow IRM. So this is where you're going to have all your foundational data set up to make sure that you're compliant as an organization. So I'm going to actually jump into our NERC CIP 7-6 standard with the purpose of this demo. Jumping into this authority document, you're going to be able to see an overview of the description as well as how compliant your organization is with this specific standard and breaking down the different compliance from a control level, as well as all the different non-compliant entities in your organization as well. You can jump in and see more details around it. And this data can be actually either manually imported, but you could also work with a content provider such as Unified Compliance Framework to pull in all the different authority documents, including NERC CIP, that you need to be compliant with. Jumping into the citations, so this is where you're going to start breaking down your authority document into the citations to start managing your compliance at the citation level to make sure that those requirements are being met within your organization. So I'm going to jump into the requirement 2.2 for NERC CIP 7-6. And just like in the authority document, you're going to have an overview of that specific requirement or citation, description, as well as the tracking of the overall status and compliance of this specific citation. So what ServiceNow IRM allows you to do is start breaking down your compliance, the different compliance regulations that you need to comply with, and have them, into a more manageable and operational level. Jumping into the details tab, you can also get more details around it. But what I want to jump into next is the control objective. So from a control objective level, this is where you're going to start mapping all of those citations that you're required to comply with to control objectives within your internal compliance framework. So you might have a control objective that matches to many different requirements in your organization. So when I jump into this control objective, you're going to be able to see the overview, but you're also going to be able to look at, from a control objective level, what is this what does this map to, and how does this map to different citations? So you can see that maps to different authority documents, including NERC CIP, so that you can start measuring, your compliance holistically and mapping, requirements that say the same thing within different authority documents. Jumping back to the overview, within the control objectives tab, you're going to be able to see, the different details as well as the overall compliance of this control objective. And then you are also going to be able to see within my organization what is being mapped to these control objectives and what controls are need to be compliant with what this control objective is mandating. So just jumping into a control really quick for this specific entity, you can jump into the control, and this is where you're going to really start having that workflow around each control tied to assets within your organization. So you can start assigning it out to a specific entity or asset, and then that owner of that specific entity is going to be your control owner. So they're going to be responsible for making sure that the control is compliant, that it's working as expected, and they can either do that via manual attestations, or they can also, from a organizational level, you can set up indicators. They'll actually go out and you can do continuous control monitoring off of that specific control, and actually go out and collect evidence that can be provided to your auditors in the case of, for example, this install your critical security updates and important security updates in a timely manner. You can actually send out tasks to those control owners so that they'll have to go in and provide evidence that they are doing and meeting this specific control objective and requirement for NERC CIP. So that was a high-level overview of IRM and how it can fit in to start monitoring your controls that are related to NERC CIP and all the different standards and authority documents. I think I'll pass it over to Mike next, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, that works. Thanks, Megan. That's a great overview, and I'm following along pretty well. So as we start to walk through, everything that's required to really meet, these regulations and improve compliance and adherence to those, as well as really, secure your entire landscape, whether it be in the OT environment or IT environment. Again, we want to think about how this is really a team sport. So as we start to think about asset management, which is really 95% of security at the end of the day, as a security professional, I want to get out of that business. I really want my IT organization to manage all my assets for me so I can become a consumer of that data and really work towards identifying vulnerabilities that can be remediated in short order, as well as finding exploit activity. But that's another conversation for another day. So we'll focus on really the asset management and the vulnerability detection side of the fence. And the way we achieve that is really by enabling our IT organization to manage assets both from a hardware and a software perspective. And some of that asset management is achieved by leveraging things like service graph connectors, our ITOM visibility solution, which will allow us to pull in asset information to create configuration items and really manage that CMDB, that configuration management database. And some of the ways that that's achieved is with the CMDB workspace. So our asset managers and really any subscriber to the ServiceNow platform is going to be able to get in and see what new CIs are out there, what new applications, what new hardware exists within the environment. And it really enables any different business unit that needs to leverage this data to get quick insights into both the assets that are being managed, as well as some of the governance controls that might be associated with them, and really some of the details around each one of those assets themselves. Now, where we draw the line in the sand, and where this is kind of a core problem for most organizations, is figuring out where OT assets exist versus IT assets. And again, by leveraging different discovery solutions to populate the CMDB, we're able to detect both those IT assets that might contain a Windows, Mac, or Linux kernel, but also the OT estate, where other systems that are going to exist in the environment that aren't managed by traditional IT tools. So think of things like Rockwell, Honeywell, Schneider, Siemens, these types of devices, the PLCs, the HMIs, these can all be managed within the OT technology workspace, where you'll be able to see all of your OT assets and the manufacturing processes, and have things broken down both by equipment model, but also by site code, right? So we're able to see what manufacturing plants are going to contain what assets and what schedules they might have included to manage downtime associated with those assets, because any remediation effort is going to be associated with specific steps and processes that might take a specific system offline for a certain period of time while we perform maintenance. Now, as we get into some of the integrations and things of that nature, we obviously have access to the store where you can search for any integration that will detect assets in your environment and pull that information in. So from the OT estate, we're able to leverage tools like Nozomi or Clarity and Dragos as a way to pull in vulnerability data within the OT environment, but we can also leverage those tools to populate the CMDB with OT information. Likewise, on the IT side, we're able to integrate with tools like Tenable or Qualys, and able to enable us to identify detections of vulnerabilities and pull that information into the database. Now, as we start to work through items, we're really talking about the life cycle of vulnerabilities that are detected, right? And that's where we have a vulnerability management workspace that enables a vulnerability manager to track all vulnerabilities detected on all the specific CIs within your environment. And all these individual vulnerabilities that are detected, right, within a particular scan or integration run, as we like to call them, those vulnerabilities will all have a unique risk score and a risk rating associated with them that will be tied to a remediation target rule that really is the clear indicator of what's been prioritized and what needs to be remediated by when and by each user. So in order to track the life cycle of these vulnerabilities, we've developed a workflow that allows us to track individual states, right? So the vulnerability life cycle is really a closed loop process. Upon data ingestion, all vulnerabilities would be moved into an open state. And really that first step of automation is to assign that vulnerability to a specific user for remediation. And this is that hand in glove approach of that team sport where your vulnerability manager is going to prioritize and assign their vulnerabilities to specific users. And then the remediation owners will pick up that workflow and move them through a couple of streams. One piece is they might know that they need to remediate a vulnerability by a specific time frame. And if they can't do that for a number of reasons, they're going to move that vulnerability either into a review or a deferral state where they can automatically request an extension to that remediation timeline. That's an approval workflow that is native to the platform or native to the VR module that enables the communication and collaboration between the remediation owner and the vulnerability manager. The other stream of process is really to take that vulnerability and either move it through change control if it's necessary, and then resolve that vulnerability as the flag to tell that vulnerability manager, hey, I've remediated this particular issue. And then dependent upon a successive scan, we'll automatically close out that vulnerability if it's no longer detected. But if it is, we can move it back into the open state and force you back through that state flow. Now, this entire workflow is pretty simple to follow, in practice. But there are other ways to go about this. With NERCs and with CIP 7 specifically, we're really talking about not just identifying vulnerabilities, but really marrying the lack of software updates on specific assets in order to produce a patch audit report that allows us to know what systems have missing updates. So in the absence of a detection technology, you can secure your assets just by making sure you get the latest software deployed to those systems. That doesn't take so much of a risk-based approach into vulnerability management, but it does provide value at the end of the day. And typically what we'll see is within organizations, within our conversations with a lot of customers, is we're seeing people wanting to produce some type of an audit report that just simply states, these are the missing patches on systems and not necessarily detected vulnerabilities. It doesn't take into account things like control violations that might exist to offset the lack of a patch on a system. But the bottom line is when you get into patch management and orchestration, we are natively integrated with the National Vulnerability Database, right? So we have that ability to kind of pull in all known vulnerabilities that are registered with the NVD and track them. And from this perspective, we're going to marry those CVEs to the detection technology to give you the ability to identify, what a particular risk score may be on an asset with other business context associated. And on top of that, we're also able to leverage our solution management component, which allows us to identify what vulnerabilities have the highest supersedence, right? So we can see if we wanted to take this from the perspective of what software distribution tasks will produce the most remediation outcomes with the fewest software distribution events, we can take the hill that way, right? And that's kind of a little bit of a patch management orchestration piece where right from within a solution record, a remediation owner or even a vulnerability manager could actually go in and update or patch a system directly from the platform by scheduling the software deployment through tools like BigFix, SCCM, or even Tanium and others, coming down the path. But as we get into vulnerability management, we really want to focus in on our vulnerability manager workspace, where we've identified all those different grouping logics, that different grouping logic associated with generating what we'll call a remediation effort. So if I want to focus on one OT asset specifically, I've already kind of pre-staged this in a way just to kind of make this demonstration move a little bit more quickly. But when I have a specific OT asset, I can see the configuration items that might be associated with it, what class that might be, what vulnerabilities may exist on that particular device, and see specifically those vulnerabilities, in a list view that will show me each one individually scored based on our risk calculators that we have, what's open, what's in flight, and really who it might be assigned to. From here, the remediation owner's task is pretty simple. They're just going to want to create what's called a remediation effort. And that remediation effort is really that ticket that allows us to track the work that's being performed by that remediation owner, whether they be on the IT side or on the OT side. And given the type of vulnerability that might be detected, it might get routed to a different user to perform that remediation. If it's an infrastructure patch, that could be one thing that could be easily deployed. If it's a code change, that might need to go to a different group to develop a remediation and close that out. But that remediation effort is really broken down into a number of different tasks. And as it relates to NERC or CIP 7 from a vulnerability manager's point of view, when I open a specific remediation task, I really want to track the overview of that issue. And if there's any policy violations that might be, impacted by this remediation effort, we'll want to see those exceptions or those controls that might be listed within that particular asset's context. And if we can give this a minute to open up, let's see if we have a good example, one that's opened. Here's a change request. So in this case, I've already opened a change request that's going to be submitted to my change advisory board for review of the priority of this vulnerability, what it is, what the implementation plan may look like, and upon approval, we can get this into that remediation code. So within this change record, and this one's actually closed. Let me pull one that's actually open. And if I wanted to create that change request, I'll just walk through this process. And what you'll see is by leveraging the solution management database, if a patch is applicable to this particular issue, we'll be able to pull that information automatically in from the National Vulnerability Database and from the records that are applied. So I can actually, determine if I want to do a standard or a normal or emergency change. I can provide a description and a justification, and I can even include that implementation plan in that patch deployment by creating that change request. And once a change has been submitted, it'll really go into that that change advisory board for review. So I will pause here and see if I can kick the ball over to Brandon to kind of take a look at this a change request from a change advisory board perspective, and let's see how the approval process can work from there.
Thanks, Mike. Let me share screen here. Yeah, so my name is Brandon Kona. I'm a solution consultant here at ServiceNow. I have the pleasure of playing the change manager role here. So I'll prove that. Coming in here, logging as a change manager. One of my favorite capabilities of ServiceNow is the reporting and dashboards. So here we're logged in, we're able to view some of those reports that are most important to me as a change manager. So I'm seeing what changes are open. I'm seeing some of the success of the changes, and then all this on the right, I can change and quickly filter those reports based off those certain fields or metrics that I'm choosing on the right. So another just way of drilling in, being able to see what's important to me as a change manager. So we're really seeing that process marrying into the IT service management or the change management perspective. If we want to drill into another component here, we can really focus in on some of the performance analytics behind what is the success that we're having of these changes. So we can look through a period of time, understand those changes. So I won't go too far off topic. We'll go back to exactly where Mike left off. We'll drill into a change request. So this change request has come in from Mike, from that remediation that needed to be completed. We've created a change, and now as a change manager, I can come in here and access that. We're seeing the configuration item here as we talked about this OT asset. If we want to drill into a dependency view and understand what could be impacted downstream from doing this change request, of course, we have this view. But really the key value here from the change manager's perspective is drawing the information using our one data model, one architecture, one platform to see and make informed decisions with when we carry out these change requests. So right away, we're seeing that the justification has been brought in, that mitigation plan or the implementation plan has been pulled in. We have all the details here so that the change manager can make a decision based off how they want to continue. Down at the bottom in our related list, we have the affected CIs, of course, that CI we talked about throughout this demonstration. We also have impacted services and CIs, but then most importantly, we can drill in and look at those controls that may be impacted if I were to continue and implement this change request. So again, insights, information right here in order to make an informed decision on this change request. Let's continue through. Let's schedule this change. We'll schedule it for Wednesday. We'll make this 1 hour long, and we'll just take you through briefly the process of what it would look like for a change manager to implement this change. So we're seeing a great example here. We've put in a time. This scheduled time is actually, we're noticing a conflict with this time. So we can look at the conflicts. We can understand that it is in blackout window. And now we can use our scheduling assistant, a great feature here that pretty much offers up times. Hey, select these times. This is a better time to make this change and to be able to do this without affecting users downstream. So when we say that, we're going to see that conflict status goes to no conflict. And here's where we can kick off the approval process. So up here, we're going to move along to the assess stage. That top part is a life stage of the change request. So now we're moving on to the assess stage. This is where the technical team down here below is going to be receiving approvals. So this is where Sarah Green and Carla Jackson, they're going to get approval requests to see if they approve from a technical perspective this change being put through. Since I've got the power of a change manager, I'm going to come in and actually approve that for them to speed things along. So now we're approving this change request. And the way we have it set up is if one change is, if one technical person approves it, the other one is no longer required. And now, as you've seen, we've moved on to the authorized state. So this is where the change advisory board is going to review this and go through another set of approvals. Again, we will just approve this for demonstration purposes, but we're seeing how we've got from one place, we're orchestrating, getting the whole team together and ensuring this change is successful. So we moved now past the change advisory board. Now we're in that scheduled phase. We're saying, hey, everything is approved. We're ready to implement this change. Are we set to go? I'm going to say, of course, let's implement this. And when we implement this, this is where those change tasks are kicked off. So this is, of course, configurable up to your discretion as far as what change tasks need to be kicked off. It can be different depending on the type of change request. It can be different depending on the CI, however you want to set that up. But for this demonstration, we've got 2 change tasks that have been set off. And these can be assigned to a specific group, to a specific person, all automatically. We want to make this as hands-off as possible. But in order to get this to a close phase, we have to come in here and close out these change tasks. So we're coming in here, we're going to open up these change tasks, and we're going to assume that they've done their due diligence. They've come in here and they complete these change tasks that need to be completed to ensure that this change request gets closed out. So we'll do that on that one, and we'll do this on this one as well. And this is where we're able to track those details as far as what is getting completed to ensure that those controls and the regulated pieces of this change request is done efficiently and completely. So we'll close this out now. And this is where it's going to have the final closure notes of the change requests, and we'll choose successful, and we can put as many notes in here as we wanted. Completed successfully. And this is where we close out our change requests, and we saw the full life cycle of this change request, being able to make informed decisions again because of the information that's right in front of us as a change manager, seeing those controls come in, and then of course tying back to the metrics and the reports we saw in the beginning. Now this is going to be seen there, and we can make actionable steps going forward. So I'm going to pass it back to Mike if you're ready, and we'll close out this demonstration.
Yeah, I will take the ball back. And just to kind of wrap this up, really from a scanning and a confirmation perspective, once that change has been implemented, whether it be through manual efforts, automated efforts, things that go through change control, really it ties back to a number of different views, from executive level reporting to manager and even audit reporting, right? If you have an auditor that comes in and wants to identify what work has been done by who and when and what steps were taken, this is really how we're going to kind of wrap this up. From a reporting perspective, there's a lot of purpose-built dashboards that will roll the vulnerability data from an average time to closure perspective, from a CISO perspective down to your vulnerability manager point of view, which we showed kind of in the workspaces. But you'll understand what some of the system hardening is, and this goes beyond just common vulnerabilities and exposures. Again, we're tied natively to the National Vulnerability Database, so we're able to pull in common weaknesses and exposures to highlight some of our configuration compliance adherence, right? We're able to pull in common platform enumeration. So CPEs, CWEs, and CVEs are really all kind of accounted for in a holistic vulnerability management program. And then taking it down both, not just within the IT estates, but also giving you a purview into your OT assets, right? So knowing how things are performing from a discovery perspective to a risk perspective to a remediation perspective, and breaking this down by site IDs, right? So everything gets managed and reported up in purpose-built reports. And then, lastly, if you wanted to get insights into that, who did what when and what was it. There's lots of descriptors around OT versus IT estates, and wherever you find that implementation plan, you can really see the details of what was done when and by who at the end of the day. And this will really give you a one-stop shop to output all of your audit reports to an auditor to let them know that you're performing your risk to remediation value stream with adherence to SIP 7 compliance requirements. And again, it's not done with any turnkey solution. It takes a little bit of all participants to play along in the game, and that's where we touch on within the platform and kind of in an end-to-end workflow where we leverage things like our software asset management, HAM, hardware asset management, change control, risk to remediation, and vulnerability detection at the end of the day. So hopefully this is a good teaser into what we can achieve in the platform. I'll kick the ball off to Amanda to maybe wrap us up.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to be doing these demos for our utility sector. This particularly 7 and 10 is a very complex, very difficult process for us to manage in this industry. Hopefully you got some value from it. We have some more demos we're working on specific to NERC CIP, but if you'd like to learn a little bit more, engage with me. Would love to partner with you. And team, thank you for a great job on this demo today. We really appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.